Well, hello there. I'm Pastor Dale. I'm the pastor to the Eastwood congregation in Niskanen. And today, for this third week in Lent, actually it's the second week in Lent, it's the third Wednesday, Ash Wednesday 1, 2. And so we're in the third Wednesday of Lent. And we're continuing with the theme of the I am statements that Jesus said. Again, the theme within Lenten and looking more at Lent being this thing of spring, a new beginning. And as we're looking at these things. And we're going to talk about the second I am statement that Jesus says, where he says, I am the light. I am the light. And it's a very interesting thing. Now we know that light is life. We know that light is good. And many metaphors are made from light and darkness, good and evil, life and death. All these sort of things that we see within the metaphors, and you see it not only in Christendom, but within our culture. And we understand, in fact, when we look in the first part of John, where he says, and the light overcame the darkness. And especially here, as those who live in Niskanen, our local team, the Niskanen High School team mascot, are the miners. And you always see this grouchy old guy, the picture might be kind of cartoonish, and on top of his head is a helmet. And on the front of that helmet is a light. Way back in the old days, it was just a candle with a mirror behind it. So they could see when they were way down a mile below the surface, taking out the ore with their old ore pick, they could see what they were going for because there was light. And the light pierced the darkness. The light overcame the darkness. And it's a very interesting thing because there are many times when we struggle in this life with darkness. And we call them, and in fact refer to them as dark times. And really those dark times come from the fact that we are fallen. And they may not, or in this life, they may not be our fault. They may have come from other circumstances, or they may have in fact come from our own fallenness. But the reality is we are a fallen people, and there's this darkness. And this darkness that is connected with sin that brings to us death, brings to us struggle, brings to us darkness. Just darkness. There's this lady in the Gospel of John, right before he says, I am the light, that had reached this point of darkness. She was accused of committing adultery. Chances are when we read that, it's true. And according to the things of that day and age, she was to be stoned to death. And they had her outside the city gate, and they're going to stone her to death. And Jesus is there, and he starts saying, he who is without sin cast the first stone, and he starts writing things on the ground. And one by one they left. And Jesus says to her, right before this in chapter 8, he says, woman, where are your accusers? Has no man condemned thee? And she said, no, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. What a fantastic thing to hear, especially from the Lord of Lords and the God of Gods. And here then it says in verse 12 of chapter 8 that Jesus again spoke to them, saying, and of course we see in 13 that there were Pharisees there. There were others that were there. And so he says to them, I am the light of the world. Very interesting thing that he says. I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. The light of life. And so, you won't walk in darkness. When I was a youngin', I had a lot of siblings, so we always had fun, but sometimes it was nice to get off alone and do your own little thing. And I found that I enjoyed a small little mirror. Oh, not because I like looking at it and looking at myself. No, that wasn't that great of a thing. You know, there's only so much I can work with here. But you know what was interesting, I remember specifically one time we had an old house. This old house that we had lived in for a short time before my father built a new house. And underneath it, when it was abandoned, underneath it was this cellar, the kind of a cellar area, a basement area. And the outside, there were these stairs that would come down to that cellar area. And one time I found this mirror, and what I thought, I played this game. I played this game with this mirror that I would take this mirror and I would find little holes and stuff and try to shine light into it, kind of like I'm reflecting that window light into your eyes right now. And I would do these sort of things. Well, I went down the cellar and I stood with my back against the south wall of that concrete wall and kind of laid there, and I actually hunkered down, and I took the mirror and I started taking the mirror, and I took the sunlight and I started shining it in a dark cellar. And it was very interesting, because that dark cellar, now all of a sudden I could see the rumbled rocks and all that, and all of a sudden I saw two eyes staring at me. So I adjusted it so I could see better. And it was a raccoon. An old bandit of a raccoon in there. And so I had revealed it through that. And see, Jesus is talking about how his light now overcame these things. How his light really pierced the darkness, as it says in John. And that he indeed is the light. He is the light. And he speaks of that. His very self is the one that embodies the light. I am the light, and the light to what? Of the world. He's the one that overcomes the darkness that's in the world. He's the one that overcomes the evil and the sin that's in the world. He's the one that has done that and then put it to death on that cross and died years ago. Sometimes we don't quite remember that, but yet here every Sunday in this congregation, we celebrate that. You see on the altar there are two candles. Now there are many different ways of understanding this and looking at it. Within Lutheranism, these two candles are lit on Communion Sunday. And many higher church Lutheran churches have a bunch of candles down here. Well, I got to relight that. I got too crazy with the wick. They will have 3 candles, one up higher, down lower, and they descend away from the cross like that. And they also will have a bigger, they'd be the 3, they would have a larger candle that's lit quite often. It's called the Christ candle. Well, in our congregation, these really are the Christ candles. We have the 2 on the altar. Now, traditionally, the way they came about, it's quite interesting, because when they would serve communion, the priest would want to be able to read what was said there, and he would stand behind the altar. We can't because it's up there, but it'd be a center one. He'd stand behind the altar, and he needed the 2 candles so he had the light to be able to read as he went through that communion service. Well, in time, we got electricity, we got all these things, and we realized, and there became a meaning with this. And the reason there's 2 candles now today is one stands for the divinity of God, of Jesus Christ, and one speaks of his humanity. And in the beginning, or in the prelude, or even at the invocation, they would have, this is when this would be lit. That Christ is now present here to bring to us the light for the world. And to understand that light is come now to bring us life. You see, that's the essence of worship in itself. We speak of the music, we speak of the way we feel, and all this sort of stuff. The real essence of worship is how through the proclamation of the word and through many of the different emblems and even the sacraments, how life comes to us. And through worship, God is bringing his life and his light to us. That's why it's so important to attend and be part of worship. Because as those who celebrate and those who are within the congregation, they are uplifted by the word and by the life and by the light that is proclaimed to them Sunday in and Sunday out. And it is this that then pierces through that darkness and brings to us joy and love and hope and peace. And so what we see here then, as he says that, I am the light of the world, and he says, he who follows me shall not walk in darkness. You see, the light is there. We don't walk in darkness in Christ. And it says, but shall have the light of life. Now, we spoke of it here in this way. How life is granted to us and light is given to us in the congregation as we attend worship. And God provides these things for us. But how does it get to the world? Well, it's through us. I learned about some congregations that have developed, and you hardly see this today. But there was a time when they would develop this thing. You see, it's got the snuffer outer, and it's got the thing that lights it up. I don't know what they're called. Oh, they put this out. They'll take and they light the lighter. Put it out. At the end of the service at some point, and then they walk out of the congregation to the back door. That is symbolic of the light going out into the world. What a fantastic thought. So that when that light and that life is given to us, we then have that light. And we then are the ones that go out and bring it to the world. Because the truth is, there are many who are struggling and suffering in darkness. They need to know the light, and the light that is of Jesus. So I encourage you, this Sunday, find your church and your congregation, if you're able to in this time of the pandemic. Find a place to worship and receive that light and the words of life, because they're for you and they pierce through the darkness. Then follow it, because there isn't darkness in that light. And be those who bring the life of Christ and the light of Christ to others. Thank you for hearing this day, and may you have a blessed and wonderful Wednesday evening. God bless.